Yeah.
Right. What is? Okay, so what we're going to have a look at today, and I'd really like to leave a lot of time for discussion, is first of all, what is the book all about, the process of the book and the contents of the book, and finally the discussion. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. So it started way back in 2012 when we actually used to do joint workshops with the speech and language therapists and OT Frontiers. And we realized actually we had so much in common that we thought we would do a short survey as to the sort of things we wanted when we worked abroad. And in fact, OT Frontiers at the time had an information pack, which was 10 pages long. The CTI also had an advice pack. I'm not sure we had anything in ADAPT, but we looked at that as well as a little survey, and we realized that actually over 90% of the information that we wanted was the same. It wasn't about our specific areas of practice. In fact, it was, you know, a lot of the things we wanted to know are similar. So that's how we started. In 2013, I ran a university workshop with Professor Mel Adams, who's from CTI, and Alice Hortop, who is an occupational therapist who worked at UWE, on working abroad. And we did this for the third year students. And that was really the first sort of foray into doing a workshop in this. In 2014, we had the first edition, and Joe's going to go through the booklet with you later, but the first edition was essentially the first section of this Padlet. So it was really, what do you want to know, what you're going to do when you start and when you return. So that was really the first edition. And we did a workshop at Leeds Met, which was very successful. And thanks to Dorothy Boggs, occupational therapist, and Claire Barker, who helped me organize that workshop. In 2017, we decided to update, and it became a much, much bigger project. And then we had a joint workshop in Birmingham, which we had a printed booklet, which we gave out to all the participants as part of the workshop. Then it all went quiet, and then I can't actually remember how I got involved with this one, but we decided it needed updating again. And I was absolutely amazed how many people were willing to share in the update of it. And I think there were, if I'm right, 10 of us who helped to write the third edition. The third edition was supposed to be supported by a workshop, but I think COVID has come in the way, and obviously that hasn't happened as yet. So if we could have the next one, please. So essentially, who is it for? It is a practical aid for therapists who plan to work abroad, either for short trip or longer posting. And I must stress, it is a practical aid. It's not a Bible. It's not. We tried to keep every chapter to 10 pages, because we just wanted something very concise that was appropriate to all the professions. Of course, some chapters were more biased to some profession or another, but that's inevitable. But the idea was for everybody. And the three networks wanted to share their knowledge, so really to provide a tried and tested information, which was easily accessible. And we really, really hope that this resource and reference is useful for people who are working in the field at the moment, or for those of us who've been before. And actually, just as a reminder, you know, let's not forget all the things that we think we know, or we should be knowing in the future. So I'll pass over to Jennifer. Yeah. Jennifer, you there?
Somewhere. I've forgotten to unmute myself. As Lesley said, the guide is the outcome of a collaboration between 3 professional groups: ADAPT, CTI and OT Frontiers. People from all 3 networks were invited to volunteer to help revise the 2nd edition of Working in Less Resourced Settings and to produce a 3rd edition. In all, it was 16 people who were involved in writing the 3rd edition. 6 physiotherapists, one of whom is a student, 5 speech and language therapists, 4 occupational therapists, and 1 consultant in palliative care. The contributors, as you've heard, met under the guidance and leadership of Lesley Gillon, and we did it through a series of Zoom meetings because of COVID. Each person in the working group identified the topic or topics that they would like to help to write. Some of these were areas of practice that were new to the guide, that hadn't been in it before, such as mental health and emergency and humanitarian work, or new ways of working, such as telerehabilitation. Most of the chapters were written by more than one person, and all of them were available to be read and commented on by the other contributors, in addition to the authors and the editors. So it was a truly collaborative piece of work. Deciding on the structure of the book was also an iterative process. As we worked to write our chapters, we discussed the project with colleagues. We had new ideas, and we thought about how we could make the guide accessible to a wide range of people. Gradually, we began to agree on a structure for the guide, which was massively larger than the 3rd edition. It has 21 chapters that are organised into 4 sections. These sections are the practicalities, and that, as Lesley said, is pretty well what the last edition was. We've extended it from 1 section to 4 sections. There's a student's corner, a section on specific areas of practice, and a section on different ways of working. And these last 2 sections were greatly expanded from the content of the 2nd edition. Can I have the next slide, please? As the document neared completion, we talked about how best to publish it so that it was accessible to as many people as possible. Most people liked the idea of another hard copy. However, the 3rd edition, as I said, is about twice as long as the 2nd edition, and so it would be quite expensive to publish. The more books we print, the lower the cost will be. For example, 50 copies will cost £23 each. In order to agree on this option, each of the 3 professional groups has to agree to cover the cost of the copies that they want, and we haven't arrived there yet. Our other option was online publishing. We had a breakthrough when Lesley told us about Padlet, which is an online teaching tool. It can perhaps best be described as a digital notice board or wall where the compiler can pin documents, images, audio, videos and links, and that can be made public or private. This means that the platform gives us the potential to develop the guide further, perhaps incorporating videos at some point. One of the platform's many strengths is that it can be accessed on different devices, making it available to the maximum number of people possible. Another strength is that the content can be easily changed and updated. As Jo is going to show you, Lesley has pinned the whole document onto a Padlet wall as a set of notices. You will be able to make up your own minds about the accessibility and utility of this format. Over to you, Jo.
Thanks, Jen. So for the last part of this presentation, what I'm going to do is just a simple walkthrough really of what we have in terms of content. And we shared the resource, and I think it's been shared with everyone a few weeks ago. So maybe you've had chance to have a play with it, have a look around, etc. But this we just wanted to take you through what it looks like and the sort of thing that we'll find within the content. And as Jen's already introduced, it's broken into different sections. So what you're seeing, I hope, on the screen now is what you will see when you hit the link to the Padlet itself. So this is sort of the first thing you will be hit with. And I'm going to say that when Lesley first introduced the Padlet, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see how it works. And it takes a tiny bit of getting used to, but once you do, you can really appreciate actually the ease of it and the simplicity of it. And it's broken down into the sections that Jennifer's mentioned, and you can easily then zoom into the part that you're most interested in. And I think this is really useful so that you're not faced with a big document, a big PDF document, so that you can instantly click on something that you may be interested, or even just move past something that you're not. So it's a really nice resource, and I will go to the live one in a moment or two and show you how you move through it, and then deep dive into a couple of the chapters. But just to show you, this is what you will see when you first hit that link to the Padlet. Just to build a little bit though on what the content is, and as has already been mentioned, a lot of thought went into the content and the chapters to make sure that they were applicable to all three professional groups and people of all different abilities, knowledge and skills, from the novice, from the students, through to existing practitioners, clinicians who may be going out for the third or fourth time supporting a low resource setting. And that this is a set of guidance, and that it's actually been adapted to be as current as possible, bearing in mind all the things we've been living through, pandemics, increasing in humanitarian disasters, different ways of working for ourselves as practitioners and clinicians over the years, and different ways that we understand how we support development work and humanitarian work and the professionalization of that as well. So a lot of thought, and I have to say, I went back into it this week in preparation and went through different chapters that maybe I hadn't reviewed before, and the content is excellent. I mean, I think anybody that's had a read of any of the chapters, this is not amateur. This is high quality information that's written clearly by passionate professionals. And there is a caveat, though, that it's all correct at time of publishing. And I think we have to remember it is a living document. And in the same way that we've updated it to be as contextually specific now in our time and space, we know, for example, that some of the links won't work as we move forward to other resources, other publications, things change. And that's something that we'll discuss more at the end. So I really, I'm very proud of the content, because it is quality. It really is quality. Okay, I'm biased, but I hope you will all agree as you have a look yourself. Another thing, and this is where we'll deep dive, because I think this is one of the chapters, as Jennifer mentioned, that really expanded the specific areas of practice. So the early content sections, the bits, the practicalities, the what is it like to work in a less resort settings, the things you need to think of. These are the things, as Lesley said, were really the start of this journey, this resource. But the chapter on specific area of practices, or the section, really a lot of thought again went into the topics, and I think Lesley did a grand job of having to say no at some point to us all, because we're like, oh, we should include this, or we need to include this, or we've got to think about this, because everybody's just so enthusiastic about things that we could put in. But as I say, Lesley did a great job on honing his on, and those are topics that were really quite cross-cutting, things that would be applicable as cross, not just professions, but as many settings as possible as well. So there are specifics in there, but you'll see some of the newer chapters, such as mental health, HIV, the emergency, working with displaced populations, are things that we may all come across, even if we're not specifically going to work in a HIV service or setting, we may need to know that knowledge, or we may at some point come across those needs. So, you know, the content as well as the universality to the professions has a cross-cutting to, you know, you may come across this and you may find this useful at some point in your journey. All the chapters are very varied in length, as much as, again, Lesley tried to cap some chapters at 10, some might squeeze over, but there were some very short ones, and I'll show you examples of that in a moment. But just to say, you know, the range of content that we wanted to build in, you know, we could have continued and you could continue, but I think we've got a good balance on what's in there based upon what likelihood is we to meet people with these needs, or to, you know, for our involvements as professionals in developing these types of services. So let's see if I can make some magic happen. I probably can't, but I'm going to try and take us now to the live Padlet. So bear with me, it might be a bit clumsy. I can't believe I got landed with this bit.
I'm glad it was you.
Let's skip it. Right. Let's see. Is anything changing for you guys at the end there? Nothing? No worries. I will do it manually. We should be used to this after 2 years of working remotely, shouldn't we? Okay, has it worked?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so as I say, this is the live resource that you will hit as you come through, and you know, it's quite easy to move through the Padlet once you get used to it. It's better to use the function at the bottom to move between the different pages that you may want, or the different sections you may want. And as I mentioned, you can scroll down and just download and open a chapter that you may want at that time. And we think this is an amazing feature, because if you are in a less resource setting and you've got low bandwidth, you don't necessarily wanting to try and download or open via very heavy documents. So this is, again, a great feature of the Padlet. So let me try and take you, first of all, to the chapters that I wanted to sort of give you an example of. So, for example, let's have a look into the equipment and assistive devices. This is a chapter, again, that every single one of us, whether OT, speech and language, physio, will probably find useful at some point. So when you click on it, you've got some different options. You can choose to download the PDF and then work from that version, or you can open in a new window, or you can view the full post, or you can just work with what we can see here. Okay, I'm going to open it and hope that you'll still be able to see it, just so it'll be bigger on your screen, but I'm not sure if this bit will work, so let's have a look. Okay, that's not any bigger for you, is it? No. Okay. The one thing to remember with the Padlet is you work on the screen you see here, so not to use your back cursors at the top. So just look for your icons and then work from here. Okay, so we'll keep it here at this size. What we've tried to do with each of the chapters is to give a little bit of an introduction, and you'll find that also earlier in the document under the content section. What you will also find when you deep dive into the content is that we use pop-up boxes to try and highlight some important features or important comments or quotes, for example. Try and insert links to other resources to help people to navigate to more specialized information, or, you know, content that will back up what's in here. Issues are, you know, highlighted to assist people to read. And one of the things that I'm just scrolling through, I don't expect you to follow, I'm just showing you the length of this document and how the chapters look. So don't worry about the actually trying to follow. One of the things that I found in the content as you review it all is that as much as it's all very guidance, there's been a real effort, I think, to situate the content within guidance that might be within the country, that might be beyond a UK focus, to ensure people feel that there's a level of competency and ability to say no. It really does take the reader, on a journey almost into each of those topics, in terms of allowing them to feel comfortable, but also allowing them to step away from that topic. So it's just to explain in more detail what I mean. A lot of the content, a lot of the different chapters will say things like, if you don't feel comfortable, step away, or seek supervision, get guidance. You're not alone with this. You're not expected to deal with this, on your own. And I think that's something that I felt was a really nice common approach throughout all the different contents. And as you'll see here, for example, we bring up topical issues, questioning our practice all the way through. And I think that's very healthy. And I think all of us that have worked overseas will know that we should be questioning our practice and should be, exploring this. So for example, here, should we be sending equipment overseas, and giving pros and cons and examples? So really very, very rich content to help the practitioner to really have a think about what they're doing. Another nice thing with most of the chapters is the emphasis on localization. Really, as we should be doing, helping practitioners to localize what we do with terms of sustainability, in terms of resources, and thinking beyond. So I think very, very aligned to the principles of development work that we are ultimately supporting. So as I say, this is one of our longer chapters. It's very practical and really helps the reader to consider what can and can't be done. Just a point on photographs. I think we've got permission to use all the photographs as well, if I'm right, Lesley and Jennifer. Yep. We had to get permission for any photographs. Any graphics that you see have gone through that process. So this is one of our, like I said, our bigger chapters, and it's just incredible how much is in there in just one chapter. Okay, so let me come out of that one. So as I say, it's big, it's got a lot in, it's demonstrative in terms of, giving very good examples, as well as taking you and situating you into the bigger picture of things. Okay, so let me take you to one of the smallest chapters. So by contrast, we also looked at some areas that are very niche in a way, but also that we felt were important. So for example, working with survivors of torture, or not necessarily working with survivors of torture, because we think that's a highly specialized area, but noting that more and more, if we're working with displaced populations or in humanitarian settings, or just in our work generally, we may come across survivors of torture. So here we have a very short chapter, but again, we thought it was important to include this because this is something that may create difficulties or challenges for clinicians and practitioners, and having something at least available to not normalize torture, but to say, yes, this is something you may come across, and it is an area that maybe you're not going to be working in specifically, but you have to be mindful of, and what can you do if you do come across this? So really trying to think of the different situations that we may face as allied health professionals now. And it's got the most basic of information, because what we didn't want to do is mislead the clinician or practitioner into thinking that they had to be a specialist, but just giving them enough information for them to feel comfortable and at least accept that, okay, this is something that I may encounter or I have encountered, and there is support there, and what else can I do, and what else do I need to be mindful of? So I think it is our shortest chapter, and it gives very, very, very basic information about, how to avoid triggering fear, for example, or different types of things that they may want to consider. But like I say, with every other chapter, we really do give the advice to work within your own boundaries of competence and how to get support and where to get support from. Okay, so you'll see attending to your own needs. And one of the things and the commonalities in all the chapters is it ends on these key messages as well. So as much as the content may be big or small, and it might have, a range of different technical and clinical information in there, we always have tried to make that content consistent in that it has the introduction, but also these key messages at the end, which I think just summarize what's in there. So I could go on all day. I don't want to, because I think the best thing for you to do is to you know, start to have a look and a play yourselves. I don't know if you've had a chance to do that yet, but what we wanted to do is to leave some space to really explore some questions about what next, and then I'll obviously take your questions as well to the team. So I'm just going to try and move back. Let's see, anything happening? Has the PowerPoint come back on screen?
The PowerPoint, yes.
Awesome. Okay, I'm having a good day. Okay, so one of the things we wanted to leave this session on, as I say, is some questions that have come to our mind, and we're sure that there'll be many more throughout the group. So these are just some which we thought of, myself, Lesley and Jennifer, when we were putting this presentation together. So things, you know, such as, you know, how do we disseminate this further, and do we need to consider education institutions in this, noting, as I say, the content is so rich. I mean, it's so rich and so professional. As we've said with the Padlet, it's great, we can get feedback, it can be updated, but how do we monitor this as the three organisations responsible? You know, how do we monitor this feedback, and when do we start to do more revisions? Because this has been, what, a year to get to this point? It's been a major revision. It's taken over a year. We know that links are going to break, you know, the resources are not going to be there. So when do we consider these revisions? Do we do minor ones? Do we do major ones? You know, what process do we need to put in place as we move forward with this? And you know, who's responsible and what are each organisation's responsibility here? And then thinking even beyond, and we don't need to answer this today, but beyond this, you know, given the content is rich and given that we've built out these specific areas of practice, do we then need more of a validation process involving, you know, people actually working in less resource settings? So those are some of the questions we wanted to maybe pose. But I think first of all, we can give space to any questions from the participants today. And sorry for going over a minute or two. I'll stop there.
Do you want to remove the PowerPoint now so that we can see everybody?
Thank you so much for a very interesting